Chapter 26. Cairo. The sun cast its golden rays over the sprawling city of Cairo, illuminating grand spires and domes that rose like sentinels against the horizon. In bustling markets, merchants hawked their wares, spices from the east, silks from distant kingdoms, and gems glinting like stars captured in daylight. The Nile River meandered in regal splendour, reflecting the sky's palette upon its gentle currents. Laden boats drifted by, their decks crowded with goods, while fishermen cast their nets with the unhurried grace of long practice. Towering above all, the magnificent temples and pyramids whispered tales of gods and pharaohs once worshipped in times now distant. Incense curled in the air, mingling with the hum of prayers sung in reverence, a tapestry of spiritual devotion woven into every facet of daily life. Yet beneath Cairo's vibrant energy, its constant rhythm of commerce, merriment, and companionship, a subtle unease threaded through the populace. Whispers drifted in the shadows, and the lengthening lines of worry carved into some faces foretold the shape of unrest. For now, few sensed the true tempest gathering on the horizon. The city moved with a triumphant cadence, poised at its zenith, as though waiting for a final unforeseen crescendo to shatter its harmony. Beyond the heart of the city, along the graceful curve of the Nile, stood the pyramids, dazzling monoliths capped with white limestone that reflected the light like mirrors to heaven. They served not merely as resting places for long-departed pharaohs, but as colossal natural batteries, attuned to the planet's gentle hum of 432 Hz. This subtle frequency pulsed through Cairo's streets, instilling calm and unity among its inhabitants. Perhaps no other city on earth boasted such a profound harmony. The near absence of crime and an enduring neighbourly warmth were attributed to these humming monoliths. Each day, the stone giants quietly channeled the earth's energy through the Nile and into human hearts, ensuring the ancient capital stood not only in architectural splendour, but in unity as well. Crafted with breathtaking mathematical and astronomical precision, these pyramids encoded the marvels of Pi and the mysteries of the stars. Their faces aligned perfectly with the cardinal directions, and their summits mirrored the constellation of Orion, bridging the earthly realm with the cosmic tapestry above. By day, their luminous silhouettes guided caravans across the desert, offering sure bearing in a world that could otherwise overwhelm. To wanderers and explorers alike, these radiant beacons were the measure of direction and place, anchors of cosmic order in a vast and shifting landscape. Cairo's walls, massive ramparts of stone and mortar, hugged the capital in a protective circle. Outside, the city gave way to graceful homes draped in greenery, mitigating the desert's fierce sun while retaining warmth during brisk nights. At the centre of it all lay a grand plaza, open to the glittering temple of Ra, its gilded exterior catching and reflecting sunshine so effectively it seemed to glow from within. It was here that Pharaoh Seti-Khamun dwelled, having taken sanctuary in the temple's gleaming halls after leaving Inanna and Sumer following the last assembly of eternal nations. Renowned for his fairness and empathy, Seti-Khamun had spent a lifetime in dedicated study. Yet a silent dissatisfaction haunted him. By birthright and duty, he remained outside the Egyptian Brotherhood, the esteemed order whose austere but enlightening lifestyle was one he had always longed to embrace. Consequently, while he ruled with wisdom and dignity, a spark within him still yearned for true adventure, flaring quietly behind the poised front of his office. Elsewhere in Cairo, far from the radiant palace and political stage, lived Polaris, Ares' father. In his youth, he had immersed himself in the Egyptian Brotherhood of the Serpent, exploring Eden's philosophies and arts much like Ares would do years later. However, Polaris's path shifted when he met Ursa, Ares' mother, at a time when each was pursuing life's deeper passions. Polaris wrote, painted, and studied ancient texts, enthralled by the secrets of bygone civilizations. Ursa devoted her life to music, instructing all who wished to learn, young, old, and any in between. Their bond grew into a family, with Ares and his younger sisters, Ara and Vela, carving out meaningful destinies of their own. Now Polaris and Ursa spent the twilight of their days practicing the arts they cherished, content in the tranquil outskirts of Cairo, a place steeped in wonder, bolstered by the gentle hum of unity binding all its people. Beyond the capital's tall walls, the Sahara greens unfurled like a green tapestry, made verdant by the ancients' skillful harnessing of Nile waters. The region offered a comfortable, temperate climate and calmer waters. Lakes and small pools sparkled, their shores lined with simple homes spaced generously apart so each might possess its own vegetable garden. The people here lived in peaceful independence, a quiet testament to how seamlessly society, the land, and nature could blend when unburdened by strife. Friendships flourished with enviable ease in these plains. Neighbours helped neighbours, travellers were welcomed like old friends, and rivalries struggled to take root. In the Sahara greens, life's rhythms moved slowly and kindly, a gentle reflection of nature's gifts. Every midday, Polaris paused his scholarship to stroll down to a shallow bay behind his house. Clear waters, rarely more than 2 meters deep, provided a serene place to swim. Often joined by neighbours, he leisurely floated on the mild current, exchanging conversation in easy, unhurried tones. In such tranquility, Cairo revealed the subtler side of its majesty, an ancient metropolis guided by pyramids, and a living spirit yet grounded in the simple joys of neighbourly company and shared humanity. Banter about the day's small events accompanied Polaris's midday swim, as neighbours who floated beside him exchanged friendly tidbits of news. Other times he sought solitude, letting the bay's mild currents soothe his mind in silence. It was a cherished ritual, a moment when the broader world and its mysteries receded, leaving space for contemplation. Afterward, he would return to his home, where Ursa waited with a simple lunch. The aroma of fresh bread and herbs mingled with the sweetness of the garden's blossoms, a gentle prelude to an afternoon spent conversing over old texts or tending their vegetable patch. When the sun dipped low, Polaris often strolled back to the bay for an evening swim, usually alone. Drifting in quiet reflection, he allowed the day's thoughts and sentiments to settle in his mind. Yet amid this idyllic routine lurked an unspoken question. For Polaris, life's challenges had mostly been resolved. No real conflict, no risk. He remembered the rigours of the brotherhood, that sharp taste of discipline and enlightenment, the allure of distant horizons and ancient secrets. Now he possessed wisdom without strife, peace without a sense of tested resilience. Sometimes he wondered, could a life devoid of tangible hardship truly encompass the full arc of human experience? In a city as grand as Cairo, one might expect the pharaoh and a humble scholar like Polaris to share little in common. However, Seti Khamun and Polaris were bound by a single, inescapable truth. Within 7 days, both would draw their final breath. This day felt different from others for Polaris. He would leave the calm expanse of the Sahara greens, his sanctuary of verdant shores and glassy waters, and journey into the heart of Cairo to procure new strings for one of Ursa's instruments. As early morning light tinged the horizon, Ursa stood in the doorway, smiling with a quiet joy that Polaris adored. "Return before sunset, won't you?" she said softly. "You know I cherish our evenings." Polaris drew her into a gentle embrace, inhaling the garden's floral scent as it drifted in the open doorway. "I will," he promised. "I love you." It wasn't a long journey, yet any departure from their comfortable home always felt momentous. He picked up his rucksack, kept in its usual spot by the door, then paused briefly, smiling at a small sculpture Ares had once made as a child. Its presence reminded him how proud he was of his son. exploring a world of discovery somewhere far away. The path to Cairo wound pleasantly through the Sahara greens. This region flourished with mild weather, fertile soil, and houses spaced well apart, each ensuring its own plot for self-sufficiency. It took about 40 minutes on foot to reach the city, an easy amble along which most Egyptians lived, as Polaris did, cultivating tranquil homesteads near calm waters. Cities were generally for youthful ambition and scholarship, centres of trade and knowledge where the restless gathered. Many Egyptians followed a life cycle of being raised on peaceful farmland, delving into urban wonders during their mid-years, and returning to nature's gentler rhythms in the later part of life. As he walked, vibrant greenery offered a natural refuge from the sun. The breeze carried faint hints of exotic spices, and bird calls reverberated in the distance. Soon the pyramids came into view, their white limestone reflecting the sunlight in dazzling arcs. A subtle, comforting hum emanated from them, aligning everyone nearby to the 432 Hertz resonance that Cairo's inhabitants knew and cherished. Each step Polaris took felt lighter, more secure in the enduring harmony he thought their world possessed. He approached the towering city gates, fortifications that once served defense now showcased colorful mosaics depicting ancient Egyptian rites, sacred geometry, and cosmic doctrines. Though robust, the walls exuded an air of welcome rather than forbiddance. Morning energy pulsed through Cairo's streets in a gentle crescendo. Those stirring early bustled about with a cheerful determination. Polaris felt a euphoric swell as he slipped into the city's flow, heading straight for the instrument vendor he sought. He hoped to complete his errand swiftly, to return before the midday hush, so he could pass the evening with Ursa's warm presence. Meanwhile, on Cairo's far side, the shimmering sun cast elongated shadows over a private military dock. Protected by iron gates and solemn guards, the port rarely stirred at first light. Yet on this morning, a ship hovered just beyond the barriers, stirring a sense of disquiet among the watchmen. It was Angeline, famed for its swiftness and regal design. Strangely silent, it bobbed in the still water, showing no sign of lively sailors or standard greetings. The two gate guards on duty eyed each other, uneasily. At length one shouted across, "Identify yourselves! Where is your crew?" From the bridge, a lone figure emerged onto the deserted deck, every movement hesitant. "The captain's not well," he called back haltingly. "He's inside." Suspicion rippled through the guard's expression. Illness hardly excused this hush. "Give me your clearance code," he demanded. "Vessel, Angeline, clearance code 72-42-7. The sailor rattled off. His voice trembled. Checking their ledger, the guards confirmed Angeline belonged to Sumerian royalty. No word of its arrival had been issued. "Why the secrecy?" one guard pressed. The sailor just shook his head, offering little explanation. "We have Nin Inanna aboard," he eventually managed, fumbling the words. "Nin Inanna?" The guards tensed. This demanded prompt courtesy and protective measures. The head guard exchanged a grim look with his companion. "Alert the port garrison. Form a reception line." With heavy mechanical clanks, gears and pulleys groaned to life, and the imposing iron gates slid apart. Angeline drifted forward into the dock's fortified basin, pulling in beside imposing warships. Below, Egyptian soldiers formed ranks at the wharf. Their armour gleamed in the early light. A hush fell as Angeline was secured to the pier by thick ropes. The lone sailor on deck struggled with each step as though they were weighed by guilt. "Assist Ninninanna," he called, his voice raw. The officer on duty frowned but dispatched 10 of his men up the gangplank. Their boots gave curt, muffled thuds on the wooden boards, which otherwise remained eerily empty. Reaching the deck, they found it devoid of life, besides for the trembling sailor. "What is this?" one soldier asked warily. "Where are her attendants?" "I'm sorry," the man whispered, regret plain in his face. An uneasy moment stretched. None on the dock or deck could interpret his meaning. Then everything happened at once. Hatches flung open, and from behind concealed panels rushed a cadre of Neanderthal warriors, each heavily armed. The deck erupted into chaos. Blades collided with armour, wet crunches of metal and bone resounding in the morning air. Taken off guard, the Egyptian soldiers were felled within moments, their lifeblood staining the pristine timbers. The lone sailor, too, was cut down, his final expression one of anguished release. Aghast, the Egyptian guards at the dock recognised too late the trap they'd allowed into Cairo's secure port. Shouts of alarm echoed. The day's serenity was shattered by cries of alarm and the tang of blood. The ambush wasn't over. Neanderthal archers emerged from Angeline's midship, unleashing a lethal flurry of arrows onto the soldiers still stationed on the dock. Before many could raise shields or rally to defend, arrows found armour's weak points, toppling men to the ground. So began a morning that would plunge Cairo into unimaginable peril, a harbinger of the storm none had seen approaching. Pained cries and the clatter of fallen shields filled the dawn air, echoing across the blood-stained dock. Guards, wounded by the sudden volley of arrows, scrambled desperately to raise their weapons, but anguish stole their strength. Dark splotches of blood spread over planks that had stood so proudly just moments before. Seizing their advantage, a fresh wave of Neanderthal warriors raced down Angeline's gangplank. They moved with a cold, pitiless precision, blades glinting in the early sunlight. The defence the Egyptians managed was short-lived. Unprepared, outnumbered, and already weakened, they stood no chance, after a series of frantic blows, and the dock was left silent, save for the groans of the dying. Within moments, the private military wharf, a site reserved for Cairo's most secure vessels, had become a scene of unthinkable carnage. Instead of delivering Ninanana, Angeline had unleashed devastation into the city's heart. Now nearly 300 Neanderthals emerged onto the pier. Bowmen scanned for any Egyptian survivors. Precise arrows took down the remaining scattered sentries with unerring accuracy. As the haze of slaughter settled, these newcomers gathered in the open space by the dock. At their head strode Vargan, one of Jark's most trusted counsellors, and trailing at Vargan's heel was Brugha, his saber-toothed tiger, whose every movement conveyed lethal readiness. Vargan's force comprised ruthless veterans of past skirmishes, each one fanatically devoted to the Neanderthal cause, more specifically, Jark's cause. Even among them, none matched Vargan's fame for cunning and ferocity. Inanna's group had already encountered his ferociousness. Now it was time for the Egyptians to experience his brutal might. A single Egyptian soldier, badly wounded, lay in the midst of fallen comrades. His breath rasped painfully, his eyes flickered in terror over the savage new arrivals. Vargan came to stand over him, the saber-tooth at his side. A joyless smirk curved over the Neanderthal's scarred face. Turning to Brugha, he uttered one guttural word in his native tongue, Gruk, meaning eat. Obediently, the saber-toothed beast padded forward, crouching low before it sank its enormous fangs into the writhing soldier. The man's final cry was drowned by the grisly sound of flesh and bone giving way. All around the Neanderthals held silent vigil, bearing witness to the savage finality of their victory over the unsuspecting city guard. Standing tall, Vargan raised his voice in the thick Neanderthal tongue. Groups of 6 sprawl out along the city's perimeter walls. Slaughter anyone you see and secure every gate. Cut down all who oppose us. In grim understanding, hundreds of his warriors nodded. Without further word, they split into squads, each melding into Cairo's streets with a swift and deadly silence. He next turned to a battalion of 20, their muscles tense beneath crude armour. "Go to the Great Pyramid," he commanded. Ereshkigal gave us her knowledge, distort its frequency. Make it tremble with our presence. One warrior bowed, promising they would hold it as long as possible. Finally, Vargan singled out 30 more fighters. Take 6 ships, Angeline included, and set sail for Pannonia. The Egyptians will rally soon. Do not wait to be cornered. Depart before they besiege this port. The contingent rushed to seize the anchored vessels, boots drumming across the blood-soaked decks as they hastened to open water. 50 warriors remained at Vargan's side, standing in sharp attention. He surveyed them quickly. "Follow me! We take the pharaoh," he growled, his voice taut with purpose. Moving deeper into the unsuspecting city, the Neanderthals stalked Cairo's labyrinthine streets. Initially, they kept to shadows, cutting down stragglers and lone watchmen. Through alleyways and across rooftops they advanced. For millennia, the city had enjoyed the mellow lull of its pyramid's 432 Hertz pulse, never suspecting violent infiltration. That serene hum now became a deadly advantage for the invaders, who took block after block without raising an alarm. Stealth was short-lived. Near the main gate, some Egyptian guards spotted the intruders. Alarm bells tolled as the shock spread. Foreign warriors, Neanderthals, were within the city. Civilians shrieked in panic, fleeing stalls brimming with fruit or dropping scrolls mid-sentence. The Neanderthals, emboldened by the fresh surge of panic, rushed forward in a lethal wave. Unprepared defenders tried assembling a line, but disarray and confusion cost them dearly. The city's gates fell under Neanderthal control, sealing Cairo's fate in the early hours of dawn. Smoke rose from sporadic fires, and the golden hum of the pyramids was lost beneath the onslaught of screams and metal on metal. Terrified families scattered, only to be chased and cut down by the merciless horde. From the palace's high balconies, Pharaoh Seti Khamun caught sight of the horror. Smoke curling above neighborhoods, and shrill cries pierced the once tranquil air. Guards rushed in, wounds streaking their armor, breath ragged as they warned of total collapse. Then the palace's outer corridors fell silent in an abruptly chilling hush. Through the halls stepped the invaders, a formation of determined, bloodied Neanderthals, led by Vargan, flanked by his monstrous, saber-toothed tiger. They had reached the heart of Egyptian sovereignty. The beast's amber eyes swept the chamber, while Vargan's voice, low and mocking, addressed the stunned pharaoh. "Seti Khamun," he said, "time we made each other's acquaintance." Across the Giza plateau, outside Cairo's newly seized walls, the detachment of warriors sent by Vargan had claimed the Great Pyramid for themselves. Its sacred entrance was barricaded, the frequency that once nurtured unity now co-opted under an alien authority. Trapped within those ancient tunnels, several Egyptian hostages huddled in fear, hearing only echoes of the harsh orders barked above. Elsewhere in the battered city, Neanderthal squads drove groups of frightened civilians into the central squares. Among them was Polaris, his docile existence shattered when he was seized at spear point. Shocked and disoriented, he glimpsed the pale faces of neighbours, the relentless feeling of terror dominating every street. Outside, thousands of Egyptian soldiers gathered en masse, coming from outlying barracks and provincial towns, intent on regaining their capital's freedom. Within the gates, chaos reigned, as Neanderthal squads roamed at will. Cairo, a cradle of peace and cosmic resonance, now reeled under a brutal siege. The city's idyllic dawn had yielded to a nightmare, stained in blood and betrayal, and neither its radiant pyramids nor their guardians could stem the tide. When the Egyptian reinforcements finally arrived, they found Cairo's gates locked and sealed. Forming in tight, disciplined ranks before the mighty walls, these troops carried siege weaponry and steeled themselves for a grim fight. Yet as they neared the towering entrances, they froze at a sight no one had expected. Pharaoh Seti Khamun stood atop the gatehouse, bound and held captive by one of Vargan's warriors. Below, the Egyptian ranks muttered anxiously. Uncertainty gnawed at them, tightening like a fist around their courage. "Tell them what I order," Vargan rumbled into the pharaoh's ear. His voice echoed like distant thunder. Fear congealed in Seti Khamun's chest. He had no leverage, no hope of defiance without endangering countless lives. Lifting his chin, he began, as his tone trembled with bitterness. It carried over the tense silence. I, Pharaoh Seti Khamen, order you to halt. Do not breach the city. If you do, these invaders will slaughter everyone they hold inside, including me. A heavy silence followed. The Egyptian soldiers, poised with weapons in hand, were seized by shock and smouldering anger. Then Vargan's voice echoed again, cutting through the stillness, laced with icy conviction. If my people in the pyramid come under attack, or if I see even one Egyptian soldier setting foot inside my city, I will have everyone in here killed. His words rippled across the dawn-laden field, leaving a dreadful hush in their wake. The men outside grasped the terrible new reality. Their beloved Cairo lay under a brutal siege, their pharaoh in chains, and a monstrous enemy entrenched at the city's core. The hours to come would be fraught with impossible choices, all lives teetering on a razor's edge. Far offshore, in the gentle waters of the Mediterranean, the sea serpent cut through the rolling waves, its sails drawn taut by a purposeful wind. Ares stood at the railing. He gazed toward Cairo's distant skyline, expecting to see a city as calm as he'd always known. Instead, an ominous sight met his eyes. Alarm bells pealed over the horizon, their urgent clang carried by the breeze. Dense plumes of smoke rose in angry columns, staining a sky that should have heralded a peaceful day. On the starboard side, Ares glimpsed a small flotilla of 6 ships sailing away from the city. Unknown to him, these were the vessels, commandeered by Neanderthal warriors to reinforce their hold on Cairo. Refocusing on the harbour, Ares saw Egyptian warships massing in the water, forging a blockade, a ring of steel around the port, something Cairo had not needed in millennia. "What's happening?" he asked softly. There was a tremor in his voice, a dread that gnawed at the certainty of all he'd believed in. Captain Theron raised a scope to his eye, studying the departing vessels, then casting a sharp look at the smoking skyline. "A blockade," Theron's tone was grim, carefully controlled. "All Egyptian warships. Cairo isn't itself today." Ares' heart sank. In his 30 years, Cairo had never known real adversity, only quiet harmony under the pyramid's protective aura. Now it seemed the city was in peril, swathed in panic and smoke. As the sea serpent approached, one of the Egyptian warships peeled away to intercept, steering alongside with practiced grace. Its officer cupped his hands to shout a warning across the water. "What's the meaning of this?" Captain Theron bellowed back. His words echoed across the gap. Ares stood beside him, his chest tightened with dread, and his eyes remained locked on the telling smoke above Cairo's walls. "There's been a siege," came the officer's answer, thinned by anxiety. "Cairo has fallen. Neanderthal insurgents hold it. They've captured the pharaoh. Thousands inside are trapped." Ares closed his eyes, feeling an almost physical blow at those words. Cairo, his city, homely and safe, now lay under a brutal invader's control. He knew what duty demanded of him. He had to help, even if that meant fighting once more, returning to the struggle he had abandoned in the hopes of a gentler path. The reality, harsh and immediate, bore down on him. To save his people, he must again take up arms and risk staining his hands with blood.